This video explains the ATEM Toolkit's CCU capabilities, and it's part one of a three-part video, as there's a lot of stuff to explain here. I'm just going to quickly explain the setup here I've got at the moment. I've just got an ATEM 2ME software running up here. I've got 4 ATEM cameras in a quad split here at the moment, just so you can see what we've got going there. I'm running an ATEM Toolkit. I've just got another one over here, this is one of the finished versions. I've already shipped the first batch of these, and this is my prototype version up here. And I've got these 4 cameras just sitting up here, and I've just got a Blackmagic Studio camera. There's 3 of them. And then I've got a Blackmagic Micro Studio camera. These 2 cameras here are 4K cameras. The other 2 are just 1080i. And you'll see they've all got, these have got B4 lenses on them. I think 2 Fujinon and 1 Canon. I think that's a Canon. And you can see up here there's my lens controller that gives us full zoom, focus, iris control of these lenses from the ATEM CCU. This camera here, the Micro Studio camera, has just got a Panasonic Lumix lens on it, and you can see all four cameras have got their big viewfinders and zoom and focus demand units. So that's just basically the 4 cameras I've got set up there, and do the big whiz pan, and you'll notice that the cameras, none of them are matching. I'm not going to worry about that for the moment. We've just got 4 pictures, all the tail lights are working, everything like that's working, and I've just got the video assist sitting here. I've also got a little camera mount here, so I can actually do a little bit of hands-free stuff here. So to go into CCU mode, I mean, as you can see, this is just the setup menus mode. Over here is the ATEM's, what do you call it? The ATEM control panel. So you can see that, we can switch. We can do dissolves using the T-bar. We can use these are cross points. You can allocate these are user selectable cross points if you just want to use buttons to switch your input. Anyhow, we'll do that in another video. We've done that in another video. Over to menu. Now we can go into CCU mode. Oh, sorry, that's audio mode. We want to go back to CCU mode. So this is CCU mode, and the first thing you might notice is that we have 4 cameras. Now, this is not limited to any 4 cameras. We can actually select all cameras that are available on the ATEM. So if it's like the one I'm using here, it's got 16 camera input. The 2ME 4K has got 20 inputs. A TVS, the old TVS, I think it's got 6 cameras. I've got a TVS the later version, which has got 8 cameras. Anyhow, and then so basically you can select 4 consecutive cameras here. So let's just I'll just show you. You use the rotary knob over here. Just make sure you can see that. Zoom out a bit. There you go. So using the rotary knob here, by rotating and pushing down and turning, you can see along the top here we can scroll across all the cameras. And this, as I said, this has got 16 inputs. So you'll see I've got the first input is actually the HDMI input, which is called on these ATEM, it's called computer, because it's takes the output of the computer. So you can see that, and then from camera 1 up to camera 15. I've also got other sources I'm using as inputs. So these names across the top here are all derived from the ATEM's preset naming. So this uses the short name, but as you remember, the ATEMs give you the ability of having a long name and a short name. So they're exactly the same names as what you have on the button. So if we just go back out here, out to the ATEM mode out here, and you'll see all the buttons here have got short names on them, which is as what the ATEM sends out when it first boots up. So just go back to CCU. You might notice also when you go in and out of the CCU menu, it remembers the last position that you had. Now you might also notice here that we have the name is in red if it's actually on air, and you might notice over here, pardon the cable, but you see camera 1's online at the moment, camera 2 is on preview, and that's reflected in over here with let's get my framing right, with the green on camera 2 and camera 1 is red. And of course, as you scroll, the tally lights will follow as well. Now you might also notice down the side here, there's little labels here which indicate what the four functions of these buttons are. And they're basically, these buttons here select the required camera on the aux bus. Now when I say on the aux bus, you can actually set the aux bus. So if I just come out of here for the moment, we go into miscellaneous, which is all the internal settings. You'll see there's one down here called camera control. And I've told it to use aux bus 1 for camera control, but you can actually, I can actually just switch this up to aux 2, aux 3, aux 4, aux 5, aux 6, and none, meaning you don't want aux control. And this particular ATEM has 6 aux buses, so it automatically works out how many aux buses you can select. And anyhow, so that's how you set the aux bus. So just go back into CCU Control here. I'm rushing through this stuff. I'm probably going to miss a lot of things, but we'll get to that. Now, with the controls for each camera, you can have the ability to be able to select the camera you want. Now, what this does is that if you actually look up here, I've actually got on the aux bus at the moment, I've got just the super source up there in a quad split mode, but and none of the lights are on here because none of these four allocated cameras are actually selected on the aux bus. So if I actually go and select this first button here, you'll see the LED comes on, and that indicates that we are looking at whatever the top camera is up here, and you can see that would be camera 1. And so the aux bus actually is indicated, the input selected on the aux bus is indicated by the buttons here. So if I actually just go over to here and select, I might do this with my hand to give you an idea, a better idea. Crash, bang. So if you have a look over here, we go to aux 1, you can see it's on camera 1 at the moment. And you come down and look down here, as I select, say, camera 2, it's the tally light for the aux bus is showing up here. There's camera 3, there's camera 4, and subsequently as I select between the cameras, if you come up in here, if I just select the aux bus up here, you'll see as I'm selecting the cameras, it's actually selecting, I'll come in a bit closer for you, you can see it's actually selecting the camera on the aux bus, and you can actually see it selecting up here as well as I'm switching between the 4 cameras. I've got a feeling that this video is going to be way too long, so it may have to be split up into parts A, B and C, but just setting the camera back up here again. So that's basically as you need to control the camera, you just select the camera you want up here, and then we have controls that will do that. Now, as I said, as we if I say select camera 4 up here, we've got the 4th camera here is now selected on the aux bus, but as I rotate down to other cameras, you see the actual tally lights following as well. So camera 4 is now in the first position, which is now showing up here as the first position, and as I select them, they're coming up here as cameras 4, 5, 6 and 7. But let's just move that back down to cameras 1 to 4, which is what I'm using here on this setup. So let's just go back up to camera 1. We're now looking at camera 1. The basic controls here are, you have iris control, and that's basically using a slider. So we can use just use the touch screen to do the exposure, and we can also use the bottom slider to do the pedestal. Now the main operation is that you will be able to use this what is normally the T-bar, where you can actually use that to do the iris control. And the way we do that is that we just let's get my finger in the way here. We just hold our finger down on the with this hand on the camera that we want to select, which is camera 1, and then we can then use the slider to do what I call fine iris adjusts. And what we can then do is that if you have a look over here, you'll see that there's the iris position over here, and as I wind the iris down, you'll see it goes down. Now that's as far down as it's going to go, but what we can do is we take our finger off the camera select button. We can then pull the fader all the way up, and we hold our finger down again, and you can see we then rearrange it. So we can actually I can actually take it all the way down to the bottom in steps, and as you can see all the way down the bottom, and I can then wind that up. So and reset it, wind it up some more, reset it, wind it up some more. Now the reason for that is that when you're doing iris control, you're not actually doing the whole range of the lens's iris. You're actually just controlling a certain area of the iris. So let's just say that let's just say we're in about there somewhere. So what you normally would do is set the iris to around about the average, and then you just put this in the center. So every time you need to do an iris adjustment, you're adjusting plus or minus from where that center position is. And if I can do this, I have to reframe this onto the waveform vector. You can see here, as I hold my finger down and then adjust the iris, you can see the iris is going up, and then you can see as I'm going down, you can see the iris is going down. So that gives you your iris control. Now the same applies to the pedestal. If you hold your finger on the camera that you want to control, and you rotate the rotary knob here, you'll see that it's increasing the pedestal. I wonder how I can show you that without, let me just see if I can do this. So I'm just going to come back here, I'm going to put a little block up under there so you can see, and then as I hold my finger down, you can see I'm adjusting the pedestal accordingly. If you do the same but push down the knob as you do it, it's doing it in much smaller increments. You probably can't see it there, but those values are changing up and down. There's a little interesting thing here that you might notice down in here. There's a little number down here, and what that does is it actually gives you the numerical value of the adjustment that you're making. The reason being is that the values that you can see on the ATEM software control panel and on here, because you notice we're actually adjusting the lift here. So if you actually see the lift control, the lift value here, you'll see that I'm actually adjusting that, and that's going up and that's going down. But when you're doing finer values, it only displays, I think, every 20 or 24 increments. So once you've incremented 24, it'll go up one. But the value over here, the value down in here, is actually showing you the actual value, so that you can, if you don't think anything's changing, you look down there and you can see that's incrementing. You see it's incrementing by 2 at a time. Sorry, that's 20 at a time, but if you hold a finger down, it increments at 2 at a time, so you can get fine and coarse. So if we just want to just bring that back down, so I'm just looking at the iris here now. What I need to explain to you here is that we have control over the iris and the blacks I've discussed. Now you can actually see down the side here, there's these coloured boxes, and what these show for each of the 4 displayable cameras, you've got the gains, luminance, red, green and blue, the gammas, luminance, red, green and blue, and the lifts, luminance, red, green and blue. Now they're only displaying the values, they're not actually adjusting the values. To adjust those values, we're going to go into a separate video, but I'll just quickly show you how you do that. What you do is that you select any one of these 4 cameras. I'm just going to select the first one, and what it does, it switches over to color control mode, and this is where you can adjust those particular values. I'm going to do this in another video because it's going to take way too long, and it shows you the lift, gamma and gain controls for those cameras. And it shows you, you can see over here, because when we came into this mode, I hit camera, I'll just go back here, oh, went too far, I hit camera 1. If I actually select camera 2, it's going to make camera 2 the camera to control, but you can also switch to the next 3 cameras by just hitting these buttons. You can see the display shows up here. So we're into this mode with camera 2, so we can actually go through and select cameras 2, 3, 4 and 5. If we just go back out of here, and if I go, see it's changed the allocation cameras now to, from instead of being from 1, 2, 3 and 4, it's changed it to 2, 3, 4 and 5, and so on and so on and so forth. So if we go back out to camera 1 mode, you'll see that we're starting off at camera 1, and then all these cameras here go up by 1. So that's how you can quickly adjust all 4 cameras very quickly between. And again, these switch the aux bus. They display you the selection on the aux bus. This will be all in a separate video. This particular video is just discussing the first screen. You can also have an interesting thing here, is that if I just go up here and sorry, let me just show you over here quickly. I'm just going to just go up to, say, camera. I'm going to select camera 8 on the program row. So now the camera 1's on program row. You'll notice now there's no on-air tally showing that. But actually, you'll see there's a little text up here. This always shows you what's on the program row and what's on the preview row. So it's actually, I'll just zoom up there so you can see it. A little bit too close. Anyhow, that's just camera 8, and so you always can tell what's on air. But if I actually press anywhere over this side other than these 2 exit and reset buttons, it'll automatically set the position so that whatever camera's on air will be your left-hand camera. So I just push that there. Now you can see it's now made camera 8 the left-hand camera, but we also have camera 9, or sorry, what would be camera 9, camera 10, camera 11, or whatever the 4 following sources are. And again, that's basically the way you can quickly jump to whatever camera's on air. But we can also then just wind that back down again. Just come back all the way back to camera 1. See, I'm rotating the knob while pushing it down, which gives us that control. So we're back over to, say, camera 1. Now I'm just going to cover quickly. We can control, as I said, we can't control the lifts, gammas and gains in this window. We've got to go over to the paint window. But what we can do is we can very quickly adjust our gain, shutter, kelvins or color temperature, and our detail. And this can be done in a number of ways. What we can do is that if you can see if I can do this, I'm just going to touch it and you'll see it's there you go. I'm just changing the gains. You might notice that in gain here, this is all set up to be able to control your normal Blackmagic cameras, but also is designed to control future cameras, including the broadcast, the Ursa broadcast. Now that they have extra gain controls, and you see there's -12, -6, and then you have your zeros, 0, +6, +12, and +18. And as you switch through them, if you hold your finger down on the rotary knob, it goes backwards, so you can go back to -12, back to +12, back to +6, back to 0, and if you take your finger off, you go forward. And you'll also notice that it goes back to these minus numbers. Now, these minus numbers don't have any effect on the well, at this stage, it doesn't have any effect on the studio cameras or the micro studio camera. They just stay at whatever the last selection was. So we can switch up. Now, you can do the same with your shutters. Just touch it and the shutters will increase one by one, and you can hold your finger down on the button and they will decrease one by one. And again, with the later, this is ATEM software 7.3, but with the later software, I'm sure there's more, but with 7.3, you can actually, you have 50 and 30 and 25 for memory, which didn't exist in the earlier ATEM firmware versions. And then once you get to the bottom, 24 you go. So once you get to the bottom, it'll then loop back to the next, to the highest. Take your finger off the button, you can increment up. So let's just put that on in a PAL country, so I'm just running 25 at the moment. And it's the same with kelvins. It's color temperature. There's a lot more color temperature values available now, and these are all available on here. And as we can, I think there's a huge number more color temperatures available. And then with the detail, there's only 4 positions on detail. You've got default, medium, high, and off. So I just put it on default for the moment. So that's one way of controlling these gains, shutters, kelvins, and detail. And you can see you can do all 4 cameras here. There is another way you can do it using the rotary knob over here, and that's I'll just do it on, say, camera 2. You can see if I push and hold the button down for 1 second, you see it goes red. Now what that means is that this rotary knob now is in control of this value. So I can just keep turning it forward, which keeps incrementing, and if I turn backwards, it decrements, and you can just see it's going through all the ranges. So it'll actually go back into minus, and then once you're down at the very bottom, which is -12, it will then go forward. So we're going 18, 12, 6, and 0 dB. So I'm in a very dark room at the moment, so I'm just going to leave these on plus 18 dB for the moment. And again, if you want to then deselect that, you can just touch it and it'll deselect it. And now we're into normal touch mode where it's actually going to increment through. So let's go back to +8. The same thing applies with the shutter. If I push and hold, it's now gone red, which means we can now cycle through all the various values that there are. These are active changes, so every time I change this, it's actually changing the value at the camera itself. I can just quickly show you that on the gain. Let's just go back to gain. So now we're on red. I'm just going to come out of here, and we're going to, well, you can probably see it up in here as I turn the gain up. Oh, the wrong camera, you see. Got to select the right camera. You can see that's the gains changing, and we're down in the -6 dB. Look, -6 dB, which has no control on the camera. Doesn't react to that, so it doesn't change anything until we get cycle back up to 18 dB, and so turning up and down. So that's basically how you can also control the values. You can also when you're on red. So we're here right now. The rotary knob is controlling the gain of camera 2. If it's red and you press reset, it'll put it back to default value. You see that's gone back to 0. so that you can, if you want to put any value back to default, you can just push and hold, and once it's red, just press default reset, and it goes back to default. There's another way you can do it as well. If you want to reset every parameter of the camera back to the default, you just hold your finger on the camera you want to change. Let's go, say, camera, I'm looking for a camera that's got a lot of changes on it. There you go, camera 1. So if I just go and push camera 1, and if I push reset, now all the values are all gone back to default, which includes your gain, shutter, color temperature, your detail, and you'll see that all your colors values of your gains, gammas and lifts are all gone back to default. So that with that pushing, selecting your camera that you want and pressing reset will put everything back to normal. That also includes the advanced options in your CCU control. I'll just go to call it up over here. There you'll see over here, if I just go over to